Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic. What if Naruto revealed his true power? Part 3. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and comment for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Oh sorry, my name is Kabuto Yakushi, and yes I have taken these exams before. In fact this one will be my 7th attempt. He finished lamely as he scratched the back of his neck. So in other words, you, said a smirking Kiba while Akamaru barked in agreement with his master. Or it means that these exams are harder than we first anticipated, Kiba, said Naruto, surprising his fellow rookies, with the exception of his team. Our sensei always tells us to look underneath the underneath, so to not make the foolish assumption that the way you see things is the way it actually is. Doing that will be your downfall. Although, something doesn't feel right about this guy. His chakra reserves are almost on par with Kakashi Sensei's, and the way he's suppressing it requires a high level of control. Whoever he is, he's no ordinary genin. Anyway, said Kabuto, bringing the attention back to him, since you guys are rookies, I'll share some of the information I have with you. Reaching into his hip pouch, the older genin brought out a deck of orange cards all with a green border. These are ninja info cards. They contain all of the information I have gathered on the exams, including information about specific participants. Even you guys are in here. What about a boy named Gaara no Sabaku of Sunagakur? Do you have any information on him? Asked Sasuke, though it sounded more like a demand than a question. Naruto had told his team of his suspicions about Gaara, except for the fact that he was a Jinchuriki, but Sasuke wanted to see if this boy had information that they didn't. Of course, is there anyone else you would like some information on? Asked the silver-haired teen as he drew a random card out of the deck. All of the members of Team 7, the Rookie 9 whirled around to see a boy with pupilless white eyes just like Hinata standing with two other genin. The girl was wearing a pink Chinese-style shirt and dark green pants with her hair up in two buns. The other boy was wearing a full-body green spandex suit with orange leg warmers and his red headband around his waist like a belt. The members of Team 8 and Team 10 each wondered why the boy would want information on Team 7, while the aforementioned team narrowed their eyes at the boy. Before any of them had a chance to voice their curiosity, Kabuto had already drawn the 3 extra cards and placed them next to the card that held Gaara's information. Well then, let's begin with Gaara no Sabaku. The 12 assembled genin turned towards the kneeling genin and watched as he spun the card with his finger before a small poof of smoke covered the card. The smoke cleared to reveal a picture of a red-haired teen with lifeless sea foam green eyes and the kanji for love tattooed on his forehead. Let's see. His mission history is a little vague, but it seems that he has completed 8 C-ranked missions and, whoa, a B-ranked mission as a genin, very impressive. His teammates are his older siblings surprisingly, Tamari and Kankuro. I don't know who his sensei is, but it says that he was personally chosen by the Cage to lead his children's squad. It's just a rumor, but it's said that he has returned from every mission he has ever been on completely unscathed. All of the genin who had heard the information on the young redhead immediately stiffened. This boy had taken on a B-ranked mission and returned from it without even a single scratch. Just how strong is this guy? Was the general thought process of the genin, with the exception of our favorite blonde hero. Completely unscathed, huh, I have a feeling his Biju had a hand in that, thought the blonde before his eyes refocused on Kabuto. A ninja's mission record is classified information that only the Cage and the higher-ups of a village's military are privy to. How the hell did this guy get that kind of information on someone who isn't even from our village? And if he has that kind of information on a foreigner, his thoughts trailed off as Kabuto revealed the information on the next card. Next up, Sakura Haruno of Konohagakure, said the bespectacled shinobi. Mission history is pretty average for a genin. She and her team have completed 20 D-rank missions, and only 2 C ranks, nothing special there. Her teammates are Sasuke Uchiha, the last loyal Uchiha in Konoha, and Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last from the academy. Overall, there is nothing special about her, just your average run-of-the-mill genin. Although I do have a note stating that she has begun to study the art of medical ninjutsu, that's something one doesn't always see in a genin. Sakura's eyes narrowed at the silver-haired genin. How the hell does he know I've been studying to become a medic nin? Kakashi-sensei only recently added that information to my kunoichi file, and I haven't told anyone else. Something is definitely not right here. Looking at her teammates, she saw that they too had their eyes narrowed in suspicion as Kabuto prepared the next card of information. Now for her teammate, Sasuke Uchiha. Neji's ears perked up as Kabuto began reading off the information. Mission records are the same as his team, so let's look at his skills. He is proficient in the use of his clan's personal taijutsu style. His skills in genjutsu could use some work, but his proficiency with Kaden techniques is well above average, as to be expected of an Uchiha. Well, this is interesting. It seems that he also has the older genin was cut off as a spike of killing intent came from the last Uchiha. Using the distraction his teammate provided, Naruto swiped Kabuto's entire deck of cards, as well as the ones he had set on the floor. Slipping the deck into his hip pouch, Naruto planned on sending the cards to the Hokage as evidence against the elder genin, but only after making a complete set of copies for himself and his team. Sasuke and Sakura had seen what Naruto had done and smirked themselves. The information on those cards could prove to be invaluable during the exams, and they didn't plan on letting them go to waste. A spike of chakra from the front of the room caught Naruto's attention as he turned just in time to see a large cloud of smoke appear. "Alright, you bitches and bastards, shut up and pay attention," shouted a deep voice from inside the cloud of smoke. Many of the participants jumped in surprise at the sound of the voice, but a small handful retained their composure. The smoke cleared away to reveal a burly man wearing a large black trench coat with a group of Chunin behind him. "My name is Ibiki Morino, the first proctor of the Chunin selection exams, and as such I would like to welcome all of you to hell." Naruto smirked as he watched almost every single genin shiver in fear of the scarred Chunin. "So Ibiki the mind sadist is our proctor, huh? This exam just got a whole lot more challenging." Glancing over at Sasuke and Sakura, he saw that while they didn't show any outward signs of being intimidated, their body language spoke otherwise. "Guys," he whispered so that only they could hear, "don't let him get to you." Ibiki is the head of the torture and interrogation division. He specializes in psychological warfare to extract information from people. So long as you keep your cool and retain a level head, you shouldn't fall for his tricks as easily as others, but you still need to keep your wits about you. He is known as the mind sadist for a reason. The two genin of Team 7 nodded in understanding with their teammates' assessment of things. Everyone's attention was brought back to the burly Junin as he began barking out orders. "Now everyone is to come forward to receive a number. That number will represent where you will sit for the written exam. Now move it. I'm a busy man and I don't have time to deal with pathetic wannabe ninja." The second the man finished, all of the genin were pretty much tripping over one another in order to get a number and avoid pissing the man off any more than he already was. It only took a few minutes before everyone was assigned a number and had taken their respective seats for the written exam. All of the members of the soon-to-be-dubbed Konoha 12 feet were scattered throughout the rows of desks, with Naruto and Hinata being the only ones next to each other. Ibiki stood at the front of the room as the Chunin sentinels finished passing out the written exams. Once all the papers had been distributed and the sentinels had taken up their positions around the room, the head of the T&I division began the first stage of the Chunin exams. "Now that everyone is ready, we can begin. Before you flip your tests over, there are a few rules that I must explain. First off is that each of you will begin the exam with a full 10 points. Also, this test is based on a subtraction system, meaning you lose a point for every question you get wrong. The second rule, this exam is a team test, so whether you pass or fail is determined by the total number of points you and your teammates have at the end of the hour. Several of the genin paled slightly as the implications set in, but unfortunately for them, Ibiki wasn't quite through. The third and possibly the most important rule, should any of you worthless maggots be caught cheating by the sentinels, you will have 2 points automatically deducted from their score. Now if everyone is ready, you may begin the exam. The sound of shuffling paper filled the room as the rattled genin turned over their tests, only for many of them to panic as they noticed the difficulty of the questions. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the fourth and final rule for this test. Should anyone receive a 0, whether from the sentinels or at the end of the exam, they and their teammates will automatically fail. The temperature in the room dropped significantly as everyone felt the weight of the pressure on their shoulders. Your hour begins now. Good luck, you'll need it. With that said, Ibiki and the sentinels sat back to enjoy the show they were about to be treated to. Naruto narrowed his eyes in concentration as he looked down at his test and read over the first question. This is an advanced cryptogram that requires extensive knowledge of village-to-village codes. There is no way a genin should be able to answer that question. But they should know that no ordinary genin would have the ability to answer this kind of question, so why put it on the test? What are you playing at, Ibiki? Sasuke bit the end of his pencil as he read over the test and came to the conclusion that he couldn't answer any of the questions. Hey, well, isn't this just great? I can't answer a single one of these, he thought with a small shake of his head. The only people who even have a chance at answering any of these questions are people like Sakura. On top of that, what's up with the sentinels watching us? It's almost as if they expect us to cheat, thought both males of Team 7. Sasuke smirked slightly at the intricate trap the proctors had weaved, but pushed that aside as he activated his Sharingan and began scanning the crowd for someone who looked like they knew what they were doing. All around the room, the stronger genin began using different methods to cheat off of the people around them. Kiba and Shino were using their respective animal counterparts to gather answers, while the two Hyugas in the room activated their own dojutsus and began copying from the people around them. Sakura and Shikamaru were using their natural smarts to answer the questions, while Choji's hand moved at the exact same time as Shikamaru's, thanks to the Nara's shadow jutsu. Tenten was using mirrors she had set up beforehand to get the answers and then pass them to Lee. Ino was waiting for Sakura to finish answering the questions before she used her clan's mind jutsu to get the answers from her. So that's your game, Ibiki, thought Naruto. Well, I might as well make my move before the weaker ones start getting caught. Extending his senses, Naruto felt out the chakra levels of everyone in the room. Interesting, it seems that quite a few of the younger genin here are more powerful than some of the veteran genin. Not quite sure if that is something to be proud of or worried about. Filing that little piece of information away for later use, Naruto continued searching for a strong chakra signature that felt out of place amongst the sea of genin. Ha! Found you. Looking up from his searching, he glanced at a male. Genin 2 rose ahead of him. Good job of hiding your sources, Ibiki, though you can't get by me that easily. Now for the tricky part. Forming a half-ram seal under the desk, Naruto placed his right hand over his test, coating it with his chakra. This one's for you, Mom. Pushing out with his chakra, the blonde created a small chain of chakra from his palm to the paper. Slowly moving the paper off of the desk and along the floor, Naruto maneuvered the paper so that it was near the disguised Chunin's paper, but still out of sight of everyone else. Using the chakra-coated paper as a medium, the blonde genin extended another small chain of chakra from his paper that connected to the Chunin's paper. Waiting until the man looked away from his paper, Naruto instantly swapped the two papers, leaving the Chunin a completely blank test and bringing the completed one back to him. My control is improving, it's almost ready to be battle-tested. The blonde's musing stopped as he watched a team of Kusa genin get kicked out. Guess all I have to do now is wait. The time passed relatively quickly for the blonde, having lost track of time as he silently meditated. Unbeknownst to Naruto, his fellow rookies had taken notice of his strange behavior and were wondering what had caused the shift in his personality, particularly his fellow blonde, Ino. What's up with Naruto? I thought he would have been a nervous wreck the second he found out we would be taking a written test, yet he's as calm as can be. What happened to him? The Naruto I know couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone almost an entire hour. Well, whatever it is, I plan on getting to the bottom of it. Her mind made up, the Yamanaka heiress prepared to use her mind-body switch jutsu before Ibiki's gruff voice stopped her midway through the process. Alright, you brats, pay attention, said Ibiki. 45 minutes have passed, so it is time to announce the 10th question. But before we do, I must explain a few extra rules that are unique to the 10th question. What? Asked a genin from Suna. What do you mean unique rules? I mean that these rules are the ones of desperation, he said with a dark chuckle. Now, the first rule, you must choose whether or not you wish to take the 10th question. Choose, shouted Tamari from the edge of the room. So what happens if we choose not to take the question? What happens then? Ibiki began to chuckle in the back of his throat, a sound that made the genin think they were in the presence of a demon. What happens then? Should you choose not to take the 10th question, your score will be reduced to 0 and you and your team will fail. What kind of bullshit is this? If that's the case, then of course we'll take the question. You didn't let me finish. Should you choose to take the question and you get it wrong, you will be barred from taking the Chunin exams ever again. An unholy silence enveloped the room for a brief moment as everyone processed what the burly Junin had said. That silence was broken by an enraged Kiba standing up and pointing at the scarred Junin. What kind of rule is that? There are plenty of guys here who have taken the exams in the past before. Once again Ibiki began to chuckle in the back of his throat, but this time it escalated into a full-blown laugh that had some of the weaker genin ready to run. Then I guess you all are just unlucky. This year I'm making the rules. But just to prove I can be compassionate, I will give you a way out. Those of you who do not feel confident enough in yourselves can choose not to take the question, and can try again next year. The choice is yours. The eerie silence returned as the full scope of the situation made itself known to the competitors. Naruto's eyes remained closed as he continued his meditation, observing the fluctuations in everyone's chakra. Ibiki truly is the best when it comes to psychological warfare. He has almost everyone so rattled that it won't be long before the censor's thoughts trailed off as the person next to him abruptly stood up. I can't do it. I give up. Alright then. Number 50, fail. Number 130 and 111, you fail as well. Almost as if a wall had crumbled, multiple others began dropping out left and right. Throughout it all, Naruto remained silent, observing all the remaining chakra signatures, waiting for someone else to quit as well. His eyes snapped open when he felt the chakra on his right fluctuate. Poor Hinata, she was always a fragile girl, so this kind of mind attack is even harder on her. She's trying to remain brave for her teammates, but the pressure is starting to affect her. Looks like she needs a little boost to make it through this. Calling on the traces of his old personality still in his system, Naruto drew a kunai from his pouch and launched it at the Junin, slicing the collar of his jacket. The remaining genin and sentinels looked on in shock as the rookie genin stood off against the seasoned Junin. Something you wish to say? Asked Ibiki, covering his surprise at the sudden action. Yeah, don't underestimate me. I am a shinobi, and a shinobi never backs down from a challenge. You can try and scare me off all you want, but as long as I still draw breath, I will never give up. This one is different than the others, are you sure? This decision will affect the rest of your life. Naruto merely smirked and crossed his arms. Those who stray from the path of justice have no courage, but under the wind of a strong leader, cowardice cannot survive. Those were the words of the Yondaime Hokage. My dream is to become the Hokage. If I don't have faith in myself to pass this test, then how can I ask the people to have faith in me to protect and lead them? I will stand by my word, for that is my nindo, my ninja way. Ibiki watched as the fear and worry left the faces of those still present, replaced by a strong conviction to succeed. This kid is interesting. He seems to have replaced everyone's worries with a strong determination. 78 left, more than I expected. But drawing this out would be pointless. After that little speech, all of them seemed to have grown a backbone. Looking around at the sentinels, he received a nod from each of them. Nodding himself, he looked back over the assembled genin before his eyes fell on the figure of Naruto once more. His eyes widened slightly as he gazed at the two specters overlapping the boy's frame. This boy, he has the same power as those two once did. I look forward to seeing where his future leads. Very well, if all of you are so set on accepting the question, then there is only one thing left to say. To the surprise of the genin present, the scowl that had adorned the man's face ever since his arrival vanished and was replaced by a proud smirk. Congratulations on passing the first stage of the Chunin selection exams. Wait a second, what about the 10th question? Asked Sakura, voicing the question everyone wanted an answer to. There never was a 10th question. Or perhaps you could consider your decision to stay the correct answer to the question. Hold on, so what about the other 9 questions? Were they pointless? Shouted Tamari. You're wrong. The first 9 questions did indeed have a purpose. One that they served quite well. Ibiki paused as he reached up and slowly untied his bandana. They were designed to test your abilities to gather information in an unknown and hostile environment. But just to give you a fighting chance, we had a few Chunin sit in with you to provide a source to cheat off of. But those who cheated poorly, failed because in the shinobi world, there are times when information is more important than life. Removing his bandana, everyone was treated to the sight of multiple scars and puncture wounds scattered across the surface of Ibiki's skull, and during missions and on the battlefield, people risk their very lives to acquire it. Readying his bandana back to his head, Ibiki looked out over the genin one last time. The first stage of the exams is over. I wish you all luck in the coming stages. No sooner had the words left his mouth than did a black ball crash through the window. Not this again, thought Ibiki as the ball unfurled to reveal a banner with a woman standing in front of it. Alright you brats, listen up. This is no time to be celebrating. I am the proctor for the second exam, Enko Mitarashi. Now follow me to the site of the second exam. Let's go. Silence answered the strange kunoichi who had the decency to blush at the awkward atmosphere she had caused. You're early Anko, again, said the scarred Junin as he stepped out from behind the banner. Anko's blush deepened slightly at her partner's words, but that was soon replaced by a look of confusion as she counted the number of remaining genin. What the hell Ibiki? You let 26 teams pass the exam. I knew this year's first exam was going to be easier, but still. Said the exasperated woman as she half-heartedly glared at her partner. Or perhaps we just have a good crop of outstanding genin this year. I'd be worried if I were you Anko, your record may be broken this year. Yeah right, like that'll happen, said Anko with a dismissive wave of her hand. Anyway, I hope you brats are ready, because the second stage of the Chunin exams begins in exactly half an hour. You have until then to make it to training ground 44. If you don't make it on time you automatically fail. Get moving, she shouted before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving behind the genin to run over each other as they tried to get out the door and find the training ground. Team 7 however, was frozen in place. They had been ever since Anko's arrival. Each of them had a single thought running through their heads, of all the people that could have been put in charge of the exam, why the hell did it have to be her? Single quote. The memory of the first time the 3 genin had been introduced to Anko was still fresh in their minds, as were the nightmares they had about her helping them train for the exams. This is so not going to end well, they all thought before they resigned themselves to their fate and left the room, praying to Kami that they lived through whatever Anko had planned for the second exam. Forest of Death 30 minutes later. Team 7 stood at the front of the remaining Chunin hopefuls as they awaited Anko to begin explaining the second stage. The thought that the Hokage had appointed Anko of all people to proctor the exam didn't sit well with them. Kakashi had introduced them to the snake user during their week of training, and to put it frankly, it was hell on earth. Normally someone who was supposed to proctor an exam wasn't supposed to help train any genin for fear of them giving up information or showing favoritism, but Anko, in her own words said, she really didn't give a shit what a group of people who couldn't shit right without help said. So she assisted in their training for a few days. She didn't really teach them any techniques or skills per se, she mainly worked with Sakura, helping, or forcing, the girl to get over her fangirl crush on Sasuke and focus more on her ninja training. When Naruto and Sasuke had found out that Anko had succeeded, they had both been immensely relieved. Naruto because now they could truly become a team, and Sasuke because he had one less fangirl to deal with, though it didn't make up for the hundreds still out there. Anko checked the sun and saw that her 30-minute time frame had come and gone. Right then, first let me be the first to welcome you brats to Training Ground 44, or as I like to call it, the Forest of Death. Smirking at the frightened expressions of some of the genin, the special Junin opened her jacket slightly, much to the enjoyment of the males, and pulled out a stack of papers. Now, unlike my colleague's test, this one will involve killing. So before I tell you what the exam is, you need to sign these waiver forms. It simply means that I can't be held responsible in the event of your death, nothing too important. The members of Team 7 all gave a collective sweat drop at the women's attitude towards killing and death. I kind of hope this is mostly an act for the exams, like Ibiki, cause if not, Naruto didn't even want to finish that thought. Shortly after, every genin had a form and Anko again opened her jacket a little more, once again to the pleasure of the males. This time she pulled out 2 scrolls, one black, and the other white. Each scroll had a kanji on the outside, one for heaven, the other for earth. Now I'm not one for boring long-winded instructions and details, so I'll make this simple. Each team will receive either a heaven scroll or an earth scroll. Once all the scrolls are passed out, you will report to an assigned gate, where you will enter the forest once I give the signal. Once inside, you all will compete in an all-out scroll battle. Your objective is to reach the tower in the center of the forest within 5 days' time, with both scrolls in your possession. Now the only real rule is that you can't look at the scrolls, other than that anything goes, killing, maiming, torturing, all of that is fair game. The only stipulation against a team passing is that you must have a complete team in order to pass. So one of you dies, you automatically fail. Putting the 2 scrolls back into her jacket, the snake mistress gave a disturbingly cheery smile to the crowd of genin. So, any questions? What happens if we look at the scrolls? Asked a Konoha genin. Anko began chuckling slightly, unnerving many of the genin present. If you open the scrolls, well, let's just say it won't be pretty and leave it that, shall we? Now that that's cleared up, everyone fill out your forms, get your scroll and get to your gate. The exam begins on my command. One by one the teams moved behind the curtained-off booth and received their scrolls. Team 7 stood off to the side watching as each team went through and moved towards their gate. Looks like they're not going to let us know which teams get what scroll, or who's carrying it. Are you surprised? They are testing our abilities in a real-life situation. The less we know about our enemies, the better in their minds, said Naruto with his arms crossed as they watched Gaara and his siblings enter the booth. Yeah, it's just like Ibiki said, Sakura said as she stood up from where she was sitting, we're risking our lives for information. Everyone here is our enemy now, whether they are from Konoha or not. Yeah, said Sasuke with his hands in his pockets, judging by the setup of things, it's safe to assume the 3rd stage will be held in the center tower. It wouldn't make sense to have us go all the way out there only to turn and go somewhere else for the next stage. Sasuke's right, said Naruto, and if the exams follow through with tradition, the third stage will be individual matches between the competitors. Which is why, as soon as we are within the forest and out of sight of everyone, we will drop our little act and reveal our true selves. Finally, said Sasuke with a smirk, this genjutsu act of ours was beginning to get a little uncomfortable. It'll be good to test our skills in the field instead of in a spar. Naruto and Sakura nodded in agreement with their dark-haired teammate, before all three of them moved toward the booth to receive their scroll. Handing over their forms, they received a heaven scroll, which Naruto placed in his hip pouch. A few minutes later found the team standing outside of Gate 12, eagerly awaiting the call to start. On the other side of the forest, Team 10 was waiting for the exam to begin as well, though in their own unique way. Choji was desperately counting how many bags of chips he had with him, and begging the proctor to postpone the exam so that he could go get more. Shikamaru was mumbling about troublesome things, but mentally he was determining which teams they should target and how they may stack up against them. Ino's eyes had a far-off look to them as her thoughts drifted back to her fellow blonde. Ever since she had inadvertently ended up on his back, she couldn't get what she had felt out of her head. All of the guys from the academy had been in relatively good shape, with a few exceptions, but Naruto wasn't relatively good. If what she had felt was real, he was ripped. But that wasn't what had gotten to her. No, what she couldn't get out of her head was how warm he was, and how right it felt to have her arms wrapped around him. What the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I get Naruto out of my head? It's not like I like the guy. I love Sasuke. But every time she tried to convince herself of that, what Sakura said before the first exam crept into her thoughts. Was forehead right? Have I allowed my skills to suffer because of a crush? The blonde kunoichi was brought out of her thoughts by Anko's voice coming over the speaker. All right, you brats. The second stage of the Chunin exams begins now. The gates were flung open as the teams swept into the forest, looking for anyone who might have the scroll they needed. Ino and her team jumped from branch to branch as they moved deeper into the forest. So what's the plan, Shikamaru? Asked Choji. He may have been upset about how many chips he had with him, but he knew when it was time to get serious. Let's head for the tower, said the laid-back genius. We can set up an ambush for when the other teams are weak from the forest and take them out. It's troublesome, but it's our best bet at getting the scroll we need. Actually, Shika, began Ino, I think we should go find Team 7. Huh, why's that, Ino? Asked Shikamaru, though he had a suspicion it had to do with why she was flustered before the first exam.